She kissed the janitor, the guard whispered, eyes wide as the drone whirred overhead. Right on camera. Looked like she meant it. His partner scoffed. She's a Ravencourt, probably drunk or insane. The screen above them showed the heiress tangled in the arms of a man in coveralls, his expression unreadable. He didn't touch her. He didn't even flinch. He just stood still, calm as the storm rolling in behind them. By morning, the footage would go viral. And the man in the video, he'd be fired, framed, and dragged through the dirt by people who didn't know what he once was. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. Because what happens next isn't just about a kiss. It's about a man with a past they tried to bury until the empire came begging for his help. He didn't chase headlines. He swept them up, quietly, efficiently. They called him the janitor, but Landon Reese once flew missions so classified they didn't exist in paper. Now, he mopped hangars for billionaires who didn't know his name and preferred it that way, until she ran toward him, until her lips pressed against his, until everything changed. The wind on the tarmac had a sharpness to it that morning. Storm warning lights flashed red across the hangar strip, but no one inside seemed to care. They had their espresso machines, their designer umbrellas, their private jets waiting with engines humming like lullabies. He had a mop, a loose knee brace, and a daughter waiting in the break room with a library book far too advanced for her age. He checked his watch. Lunch in 20. She liked her soup warm, not hot. That's when the screaming started. Not panicked, controlled. The kind of scream someone uses when they know panic gets them caught faster. The kind that comes from someone smart, someone used to escaping attention. She bolted through the side gate barefoot, blood streaking down one ankle, hair loose from its designer twist. Selene, Ravencourt, tabloid royalty, billionaire's daughter, corporate prize. And she was heading straight for him, her eyes locked with his. There was no fear in them, just calculation. "Kiss me," she gasped, the words slamming into him as she grabbed the front of his shirt. He opened his mouth, only to close it again when she rose on tiptoe and crushed her mouth to his. It wasn't a romantic kiss. It was a weapon. Precise, deliberate, held just long enough for the drone sweeping the area to pause, then veer off with a soft, mechanical click. Target dismissed. Then she stepped back, nodded once, and ran. By the time the security team found him, he was already folding up the wet floor sign like it was just another day. Later, in the break room, Emery asked him why people were staring at him like that. He lied, said it was because someone important tripped over his mop bucket and they were trying to blame him. She didn't believe him, but she smiled anyway. "Did you fix it?" He blinked. "Fix what?" "The problem," she said, sipping her soup. "I just stood there," he replied. "Sometimes," she said, too wise for her 9 years, "that's all it takes to stop something worse." She didn't know yet that the woman's mother would call the next day, that the call wouldn't be kind, or quiet, or legal. She didn't know her father would be suspended, accused, blacklisted. All she knew was that for once, her dad looked different, like something was waking back up in him. Like the past he never talked about had taken a breath, and that breath wasn't going back in. He didn't say anything as he walked Emery to school the next morning. She held his hand, swinging it gently, sensing the silence around him was heavier than usual. It wasn't just the kiss, or the way everyone stared at him on the tarmac after. It was what he saw in Celine's eyes. The calculation, the desperation, the trust. Only someone used to being hunted looked like that, and he'd seen that look before, back when he wore a flight suit and flew over hostile borders with blacked-out controls and no backup. The memory hit hard. Then came the call. He was standing beside the supply closet, restocking paper towels, when the hangar phone rang. They never used the phone for him. No one ever called for the janitor. But the voice on the other end wasn't confused. It was precise. "This is Evelyn Ravencourt." He said nothing. "You will tender your resignation before end of day. The footage has already been pulled from our systems. You'll receive 6 months' pay, so long as you remain silent." Still, he said nothing. "There are powerful men involved in this," she continued. "You were in the wrong place. It's unfortunate, but it's manageable." "Your daughter ran toward me," he said, calmly. A beat of silence. "She's impulsive," Evelyn said, "and you are expendable." He hung up. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the strip, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel small under them. He felt dangerous. They suspended his badge by noon. His access card stopped working. They didn't even wait for an investigation. The Ravencourts didn't need due process. All Emery wanted was to know why he was home early, so he told her the truth. "She used me to hide," he said, "from something big." "Are you in trouble?" "No," he said, "but someone's making it look like I am." "Because you helped her?" He nodded. She went quiet for a moment, pushing her pencil around her math worksheet. "Are they going to take your job?" "They already did." "But that's how we pay for my doctor visits." He reached out and smoothed her hair, just like he used to when she was little. "We'll figure it out." The knock on the door came just after dark. He opened it to find Julian Marr standing there, slightly older, broader, dressed in a black suit that didn't quite hide the soldier underneath. "Didn't expect to find you in a place like this," Julian said. "Didn't expect you to come find me at all." Julian held up his hands. "I'm not here for Ravencourt. I came because of what I saw." "You saw the kiss?" Landon asked, arms crossed. "I saw what happened after. I saw Evelyn's orders, and I saw the drone redirect protocol." So, someone rerouted military-grade AI to track Celine without authorization. That tech's not supposed to be operational in domestic zones. Landon's eyes narrowed. "You think she was being hunted?" "I think she still is," Julian said quietly. "And you just became a liability." He didn't answer. Instead, he glanced back at Emery, who was peeking around the hallway with wide eyes. "She okay?" Julian asked. "She's my only reason for keeping quiet," Landon replied. Julian reached into his pocket and handed him a flash drive. "What's this?" "Everything I could copy, before they locked me out. It includes logs of what Celine was running from, and where she might have gone next." Landon stared at it. "Why bring this to me?" "Because I've seen you fly into war zones with less, and because if they get to her before you do, it won't end with a headline, it'll end with a cover-up." He didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, because for the first time in a decade, the world had called him expendable and expected him to lie down and take it. By morning, he dusted off the emergency flight logbook tucked beneath his floorboards. "Are you going to help her?" Emery asked quietly as she poured cereal into a chipped bowl. He didn't lie. "I think I have to." She pushed the toy jet across the table toward him, her version of a blessing. "Then you better start flying again. Subscribe with the bell on because next time Someone vanishes for real, and this single dad becomes the only way back. He hadn't held a flight chart in years, but his fingers still remembered the creases, the markings, the weight of decisions made in silence. Landon spread the charts across the kitchen table, pushing Emery's crayons aside, and began cross-referencing the data from Julian's flash drive. AI pathing, drone rotation cycles, comms dropouts. Whoever was hunting Celine wasn't sloppy. They were using tools meant for wartime surveillance. But they weren't military. Not anymore. He traced a corridor on the map where 3 dead signals aligned, one near the coast, one over a private island route, and one close to Ravencourt's off-the-books testing facility in the Redwoods. She was trying to disappear completely. Emery watched from the hallway, curled in her favorite blanket, clutching her stuffed fox. "Are you leaving today?" "Not yet." She nodded like it was a mission briefing. "You'll find her," she said. "You always did before." He gave her a small smile. "Back then, I had a team, a plane, clearance. You have me." And that meant more. He made 3 calls. One to a retired mechanic in Fresno who still owed him a favor. One to a warehouse that had an old flight sim rig Landon once trained contractors on. And one to someone he hadn't spoken to since the discharge, the man who signed off on burying him. He left no message, but by noon he had access to an unmarked hangar and 2 old drones that could fly without triggering Ravencourt airspace alerts. The sun was brutal that day, as if trying to burn away the story before it started. He didn't wear the flight jacket, just a hoodie, work gloves, and the steel-toed boots that never quite stopped aching. He loaded up one of the analog drones, stripped of GPS, blind to satellites, and launched it low across the tree line. If Celine was still out there, hiding in blind zones, she'd built her silence out of patterns, and patterns always leave echoes. The first 2 sweeps came back dead. The third, static at first. Then, just before the signal cracked, an audio pulse, rhythmic, tapping, not natural. He ran it through his daughter's old laptop, filtering the waveform. It was Morse, a single repeating phrase. Echo 7. It wasn't a name. It was a fallback call sign. One only 3 people ever used. He was one of them. By the time the signal dropped again, he'd already pulled his old duffel from the closet. Inside, the badge he'd never turned in. His flight ID, expired but real. A backup comm earpiece that still lit red when he tapped it, and beneath it all, the folder Emery had never seen. The one marked redacted in 3 languages. He didn't touch it. Not yet. The knock at the door came just as he zipped the bag shut. Julian again, but this time he wasn't alone. The woman beside him was tall, sharp-shouldered, and wore a Ravencourt internal security badge that gleamed under the porch light. She didn't introduce herself. "You're accessing classified frequencies," she said. "That puts you in violation of the Telecommunications Act." Landon looked past her, straight at Julian. "You brought a leash?" Julian's jaw twitched. "I didn't tell her to come." She stepped forward. "We can handle this. The company has resources you can't imagine." "You already tried that. She still vanished. You're overstepping." "No," he said, calm as thunder. "I'm returning." She reached into her coat. Julian tensed, but she only pulled out a folder. "This is what you're walking into," she said. "Untraceable drones, ground interference systems. They don't want her rescued." "She's not a hostage," Julian added. "She's a liability to someone." Landon took the folder, but didn't open it. "I don't need names, just time." You won't get it, the woman warned. I don't need permission, either. She opened her mouth to respond, but Emery appeared behind him. She already tried to thank him, the girl said simply. So did you, but he's not helping you. He's helping her. That silenced them both. He stepped onto the porch, duffel slung over his shoulder. You'll see me again when she's safe. And if you're not, Julian asked. He paused. Then tell my daughter I made peace with who I used to be. He walked into the night without looking back. The unmarked hangar on the edge of the old airfield hadn't seen life in years. Moss crept over the floodlights. The steel roll-up door groaned when he lifted it, and dust rose like memory from the floor. Landon stepped inside and let the dark settle around him. Everything smelled like rust and jet fuel. Familiar, grounding. The aircraft waiting inside wasn't Ravencourt grade. No biometric locks, no AI autocorrect. Just a stripped-down Cessna modded for stealth testing years ago. A ghost in the sky. Julian had been right. If someone wanted Celine erased, she'd chosen the one path they wouldn't track, and this plane could follow her. He walked the perimeter, checking wing seals, fuel lines, tension on the flaps. The same way he used to before every black flight op. No comms, no backup, no forgiveness. The drone data still clutched in his pocket told him where to start. Echo 7. A fallback phrase embedded in her old security clearance. Not just a signal, it was a location tag embedded in legacy Ravencourt comm systems. The Redwood exclusion zone had been scrubbed from maps years ago, but Landon remembered. They'd used it for silent evac drills. Underground bunkers, no digital signature. Hidden in plain wilderness. If Celine had reached it, she was hiding in the only place her mother's empire couldn't penetrate without admitting it existed. He fueled the Cessna by hand, checked weather manually, marked wind drift the old way, chalk and compass, no satellite guidance, no flight plan. This wasn't flying. This was vanishing. He took off just after 4 a.m., engines barely loud enough to rattle the glass of the control tower. No one inside. No one watching. That's how they wanted it. At 1,000 feet, he cut the radio. At 3,000, he switched to analog altimeter, then dimmed the dash. Nothing left but the drone coordinates and the terrain stitched into his memory from missions no one would ever acknowledge. He didn't expect to find her signal again. But 12 minutes into Redwood airspace, the static on his backup feed shifted. A soft tap, like fingers on metal. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short again. SOS. He banked low, cutting into a blind pocket between the trees. Below, a flash of light blinked 3 times from a rocky ridge. Not a flare. Reflected glass. He pulled into descent. Wind buffeted the wings, the kind of turbulence that would have panicked a rookie. But Landon didn't panic. He adjusted trim and rolled into the glide like he was made for it. Wheels hit gravel, hard. The tail dipped. The left gear protested. But he was down. He cut the engine and stepped out. The forest was silent until it wasn't. Don't move, the voice came from behind the ridge. He turned slowly, hands raised. Celine stepped out, clutching a lightweight subcompact pistol, dirt smeared across her cheek, blood dried on her temple. She blinked. You? Me. She stared at him like he was a dream she hadn't dared hope for. How did you? Echo 7, he said simply. You tagged it. She lowered the weapon, stumbling slightly. He caught her before she fell. They took my trackers, she said, voice hoarse. Scrubbed my prints, said I was a risk to national... I know, she looked up at him. My mother? Wants this buried. She closed her eyes. Figures. He glanced around. We need to move. This place won't stay blind for long. There's a drop path, she whispered. East of the ridge leads to a communications tunnel. No power, but safe. He helped her walk. She leaned into him more than he expected, but never asked for help, just like Emery. They made it to the tunnel just as the first surveillance drone buzzed overhead. Landon pressed her into the wall, wrapping both arms around her. She didn't flinch. The drone passed, silent. He exhaled slowly. We have maybe 20 minutes before they triangulate. Celine pulled something from her jacket, a small drive, barely the size of a fingernail. This is what they want, she said. It's not just Ravencourt. It's private weapons AI, sold off ledger, predictive control algorithms, and test footage. Footage of what? Kill switches activated in civilian zones, without consent. He stared at her. That's why I ran, she said. That's why they want me gone. He took the drive. Then he looked up at the sky above the tree line. They weren't out yet, but now he had something worth crashing the gates for. The tunnel was narrow, cut into stone decades ago, or emergency evac drills, never meant to hold real fugitives. Celine moved like she knew it by feel, guiding Landon with slow, careful steps through the dark. Water dripped from cracks above, echoing with a rhythm that reminded him of bunker holds back in Afghanistan. She didn't speak again until they'd reached the sealed hatch at the far end. This used to open into a private relay station, she whispered, but they collapsed it when the contracts went dark. Landon examined the rusted bolts, ran his hand along the side panel. Not collapsed, just welded shut. He dropped his duffel and unzipped the outer pocket. Inside was a tool no one would expect a janitor to carry, especially not a Ravencourt security team. A military-grade art cutter, stripped down and battery-fed, still functional, still sharp. Celine watched with wide eyes. Why do you have that? Because I never stopped being what they buried, he said, then added, quieter. I just stopped letting anyone see it. The cutter hissed to life. Sparks lit the narrow walls. She turned away from the light, but didn't retreat. He carved a clean line around the hatch bolts and wedged it open. On the other side, a room filled with dust and silence waited. Once a Ravencourt observation hub, now forgotten. He stepped inside first, clearing corners. Celine followed. Monitors were smashed, power lines cut, but the reinforced floor held. More importantly, the signal scrambler embedded in the wall was still active, casting a digital dead zone over the entire chamber. He set her down gently on a broken bench. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out the drive. This exposes more than just Ravencourt, he said. You realize that? She nodded. It's global, but it started here. If we leak it properly, they won't just come after me. They'll have to explain how a janitor found me before they did. Landon gave her a look. That's not why I came. I know. She gave a small smile. But it helps. He turned to the wall panel, brushed off layers of dust, and pried open the manual relay box. Wires, fiber, old ports designed before smart encryption. He connected his wrist patch to the line and waited. Nothing. Then, static. Not from the wall. From his comm earpiece. A single ping. Echo return confirmed. He tapped once in response. 2 pings followed. Inbound. Hostile. He muttered under his breath and stepped back into the room. We've got 5, maybe 6 minutes before they break into this zone. Celine stood despite her limp. Then let's make sure they find nothing. He crushed the drive under his boot. She gasped, but before she could speak, he pulled a second one from his inside pocket. "A dummy," he said. "Let them think it's gone." The real drive slid into a hidden compartment beneath the bench, beneath a scratched carving that caught Celine's eye. "What is that?" Landon crouched. The carving was faint. "It's he—" Fox curled beneath wings. Below it, the initials, ER. His chest tightened. "Emery Reese," Celine read aloud. "Your daughter?" He didn't answer right away. "I carved it here 10 years ago," he said finally. "Back when this room still had power, they told me it would never matter again, that I was done." Celine knelt beside him. "Why here?" "Because I wanted her to know that even in the darkest place, someone was thinking of her, that her name lived where no one could erase it." Her fingers brushed the carving. "You ever show her?" "She doesn't know it exists," he said. "But she will, when this is over." They stood together, silent, listening as footsteps echoed faintly through the tunnel. Celine turned. "You should go. If they find you, you lose her." "I lose her if they win," he said, voice low. "If this system keeps deciding who's allowed to matter, if they get to erase whoever doesn't fit." Outside, boots scuffed against gravel. Inside, Landon stood straighter. "We don't run," he said. Then he pulled something else from the bag, an old drone controller, manual, wired. Celine blinked. "You still fly analog?" He gave a half smile. "Emery learned on it before she could ride a bike." He activated the linked drone outside, one of Julian's. It zipped past the inbound team with a high-frequency flash bomb meant to short-range visors. Screams followed, confusion, radio calls. Landon took Celine's hand. Time to move. They vanished through the back vent as smoke poured through the tunnel entrance. And behind them, the only thing left was a child's name carved in steel, watching. Smoke followed them through the vent, curling in ghost-like tendrils as they crawled single file. Landon kept his hand near the wall, counting rivets, every turn etched in muscle memory. Celine's breath rasped behind him, uneven but steady. The duct opened into a weathered maintenance shaft that descended into what had once been Ravencourt's geothermal backup station, now just a hollow chamber humming with silence. They dropped down, landing in dust. He checked his watch. 3 minutes before the breach team realized the drone was bait. Celine leaned against the far wall, chest heaving. "How did you know? All of this would still be here." "I designed part of it," Landon replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "Before they erased my name from the credits." She blinked. "You're not just some ex-pilot, are you?" "I was their system strategist, field engineer, backup recovery lead, before I became expendable." She nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I mop floors, raise my daughter, and fix what people like your mother pretend doesn't break." They moved fast. The shaft led to a service corridor buried under 20 feet of redwood roots. Landon guided them through blind zones, avoiding seismic triggers and motion sensor lines he helped install before. Ravencourt's expansion turned hidden bunkers into tools of silence. Above them, drones buzzed. But here was a blindfold in plain sight. Celine limped but kept up. Every few steps she glanced sideways at him. "You've done this before. Extraction missions, one-way ops, ghost corridors." "Yeah," she looked away. "I thought I was alone." "You weren't. You just had to vanish long enough for the right eyes to open." A metallic click stopped them both. Landon threw an arm out, stopping her mid-step. Motion trip. They froze. He scanned the dark. A wire, no thicker than thread, ran ankle height across the hall, pressure sensitive. He crouched, slowly, reached for the tool pouch clipped to his belt. The snip came clean, silent. Then he pointed at the wall. "Stay low, we're 2 turns from daylight." They made it to the hatch that led to the ravine overlook, an old access point for cargo lifts that had long since rusted. But the view beyond was clear, a dell. Slope dropped into pine-sheltered fog. No drones, no roads, just silence and slope. He knelt beside a crate and unlatched a compartment. Celine raised a brow. "You stashed supplies?" "Always do, just in case they ever came for me again." Inside, thermal wraps, an old analog tablet, and a weatherproof satchel. He handed it to her. "You'll take this path east, cut through the quarry line. There's a rail shack at the base. Emergency power, solar ping backup." "And you?" He stood. "I'm heading back." She grabbed his arm. "Why? You got what you came for." "Not yet," he said. "They're still coming, and as long as I'm out here, they won't stop." "You're the distraction." "I'm the consequence," he replied. She stared at him, jaw set. Then she opened the satchel. Inside, nestled between 2 data cores, was something small and carved. A toy jet, painted in fading blue. Her breath caught. "This is my daughter's. I brought it when I thought I wouldn't make it back." Celine's throat tightened. "She's why I don't stay down," he said. "Why I don't stay erased." Above them, the drone buzz grew louder, closer. He reached into the crate and pulled out a flare gun. "Go now, 10 minutes ahead of the flash. Stay off path." "I won't forget this," she said, voice shaking. "You're not supposed to," he replied. She hugged him, brief, tight. Then she vanished into the trees. He climbed the ridge and waited. 2 minutes later, the drones locked onto his heat signature. The flare arced high, bright red against gray sky. And for the first time in years, Landon Reese stood tall, not hiding, not apologizing, not broken, just ready. Back at home, Emery stared at the bench he built with her name carved under it. The flare's smoke hadn't yet faded when the first boots hit the ridge. 3 figures in mat armor, no insignia. Not Ravencourt internal. Contractors, silent, fast, eyes shielded behind polarized visors. Landon stood still as they surrounded him. "Identify," one of them barked. He raised his hands, fingers spread. "Civilian, unarmed." They flanked him anyway. "You're Landon Reese," said the one on his left, voice distorted by a comm mask. He didn't confirm it, didn't need to. The center soldier stepped forward. "You were seen aiding the Ravencourt heir." He tilted his head slightly. "Funny, I was just fixing a pressure seal when she kissed me." The soldier didn't blink. "You accessed restricted airspace, deployed a military-grade analog drone, and evaded surveillance for 48 hours. Guess the mop bucket training really paid off." The soldier stiffened. "You're coming with us." "I figured," but as they reached for him, his comm clicked once in his ear, barely audible. "Fox to Wingman, payload secured, en route to Nest." Emery's voice. The phrase wasn't random. She'd only use it if Celine had made it. If the drive was hidden, and the signal reached the off-grid relay shack Julian had rigged weeks ago. Landon had helped him build it, back when he still believed staying hidden was survival. Now it was his daughter's voice telling him the mission was live. He smiled. The soldier grabbed his wrist roughly. "Let's go." They dragged him back through the forest to the clearing. A black transport chopper waited, rotors slow and heavy like judgment. Wind whipped the trees as they shoved him inside. And there she was, Evelyn Ravencourt, poised, immaculate, power tailored into every inch of her slate-gray suit. She didn't stand, didn't offer him a greeting, just looked at him as if he were an oil stain on a runway. He sat across from her. No restraints, just tension thick enough to weld steel. "You caused a great deal of disruption," she said finally. "You built a system that erases people," he replied. "I just put a light on it." Her gaze sharpened. "My daughter is naive, idealistic. She doesn't understand the implications of what she stole. She understood enough to risk everything getting it out. She'll be silenced." He met her eyes. "You've already failed at that." A flicker, a crack in her armor. "I gave you an out," she said. "You could have taken the settlement, disappeared again. I've spent a decade hiding so my daughter could live. That's over now. You're not a hero." "I don't need to be," he said, voice low. "I just need people to see you panic." The co-pilot leaned back and whispered something to her. She stiffened. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer, but he knew. The data drop had gone live. Somewhere, likely multiple somewheres, the footage Celine risked her life to save was surfacing. Predictive kill switches, covert AI sweeps, illegal surveillance on domestic soil, and the name Raven Court attached to every prototype. Evelyn didn't scream. She didn't break. She did what true power does when it's cornered. She recalculated. "What do you want?" she asked. He raised an eyebrow. "That's new." Her voice cooled. "The footage is out. You've won the performance battle. But narratives, they linger. Tell me what it'll take for you to stay out of mine." He leaned forward. "There's a bench at the South Point airfield," he said. "I carved my daughter's name into it. What? If you touch it, remove it, or silence it, I come back." Evelyn stared. "And next time," he added, "I won't come alone." A pause. Then she gave a slight nod. Not agreement, acknowledgement. They flew in silence. Back at the airstrip, Emery waited by the bench, tracing the faded lines of her name. Her backpack rested beside her feet, the fox plush tucked under one arm. Julian pulled up beside her in an old truck. "He'll be okay," he said gently. She didn't look up. "I know," because she'd heard her father's voice in that one silent promise. He was never going to disappear again. The truck rattled as it pulled away from the airfield. Emery sat in the passenger seat beside Julian, silent, her fingers tracing the toy jet's chipped paint. She hadn't spoken since the comm crackled with her father's voice. Not words, just a three-tone signal, one they'd practiced for years in case he ever needed her to finish what he couldn't. Julian kept glancing at her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't afraid. She was waiting. The same way Landon used to wait before a strike. Quiet, focused, already 10 moves ahead. They passed the chain-link gate. 2 guards tried to wave them down. Julian didn't stop. He flashed the clearance badge he shouldn't have had anymore, and the guards looked away. Raven Court was scrambling. Inside the boardroom on the 89th floor of the Raven Court Tower, Evelyn stood before her executive council. Screens lined the walls, half of them frozen, on feeds showing news anchors fumbling through breaking reports, leaked schematics, whistleblower testimony, footage of predictive AI failures and forced drone captures, all stamped with the watermark, recovered by LR. Someone whispered, "It's everywhere now." Evelyn didn't respond. Her assistant stepped forward, nervous. "What should we tell shareholders?" She exhaled through her nose. "We tell them the infrastructure is intact, that operations continue, and that our former systems strategist is being handled." But he's not, someone else said from the doorway. They turned. Celine, alive, standing in their tower with dirt still on her boots and eyes sharper than steel. "Get out," she said to the room. Silence. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "This is not the time." "You lied to them," Celine said. "To me. You tried to disappear someone who saved your company more times than you even know." Evelyn stepped forward. "You don't understand the we scale." "No," Celine cut in. "You don't understand the cost. He carried your secrets, raised a daughter in the shadow of what you destroyed, and still chose to save you. You think he saved me? I know he didn't have to." The room emptied fast. Julian pulled up in the alley behind the tower, headlights off. Emery reached for the satchel. Inside, the physical drive, the one no one had touched. She held it like it was sacred. "You ready?" Julian asked. She nodded. Upstairs, Celine slid a key card into the archive port, one of the few offline systems Ravencourt still maintained. "You never taught me this part," she said softly. Evelyn sat heavily in a chair. "Because I never expected you to stay." "Well," Celine replied, "you never expected him to come back either." Moments later, the master access key blinked green. In the Ravencourt server logs, a quiet entry appeared. Legacy protocol, Lancer activated. Down below, Emery inserted the drive into the relay node Julian had wired behind the tower junction. The footage didn't just stream, it was embedded. Every Ravencourt terminal, every secure device. A quiet signal hidden in the architecture, impossible to erase without dismantling their own backbone. Landon's voice, recorded years ago during a training sim, played faintly beneath the footage. "This isn't about revenge, it's about record. You don't bury what matters, you fix it." At the airfield, the bench was still there, cleaned, untouched. Landon's boots stepped beside it just as the sun broke over the hangar roofs. He sat, no escort, no guards, just him. Celine appeared a minute later, holding a thermos of coffee. "You came back. I never left." She sat beside him. "She did it, you know, your daughter. She's the one who made the final connection." He smiled. "I figured. She's the better engineer." "You know you've just made some powerful enemies." "I made them tell the truth," he said. "That's worse." She sipped the coffee. "So what now?" "I fix things," he said. "That's what janitors do." Behind them, a Ravencourt jet lifted into the sky, and below it, etched into the bench in fresh paint. "ER. When truth flies, it lands somewhere. Subscribe if you believe silence should never win. And remember, sometimes a janitor carries more truth than an empire." The bench stayed warm in the morning sun. Landon let his palm rest gently on the fresh paint, tracing the letters with his thumb, ER, like a silent oath. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was watching. Celine finished her coffee beside him and glanced toward the hangars. "You know they'll try again. Different tools, different names." "They always do," he said. "But this time, people are watching." She nodded slowly. "You gave them something they didn't expect." He smirked. "A janitor with a memory." From across the tarmac, Emery came running. Her backpack bounced against her shoulder, the sleeves of her sweater tied around her waist. Landon stood as she reached him, breathless but grinning. "I checked the feeds," she said. "The last video hit 4 million views. Government committees requesting Ravencourt's contract files." "And you?" he asked, ruffling her hair. "I'm grounded," she grinned. "Principal said hacking the school's firewall for a freedom drop violates student policy." He laughed, a full laugh, not the quiet kind he'd grown used to. Celine crouched, eye level with Emery. You made history. I just followed Dad's flight plan, she said. Landon glanced toward the open sky. Time to plan the next one. Julian pulled up again, the same dented truck, now loaded with boxes. That a real plan? He asked, climbing out. Or one of your poetic metaphors? Landon reached for a clipboard resting on the bench. New contract. Civilian side. Emergency systems. Retrofitting. Oversight and whistleblower transparency enforcement. Julian raised an eyebrow. That's real? Landon handed him the clipboard. Signed by 5 companies, all quietly separating from Ravencourt in the fallout. Celine crossed her arms. And they want you to consult? No, Landon said. They want someone who's not afraid to sweep dirty corners. Julian let out a low whistle. That's poetic. They're paying decent too, Emery said, fishing a granola bar from her pack. Which means we don't have to eat clearance soups anymore. Celine stood and turned toward the far hangar. I have one last thing to return. Landon followed her into the maintenance bay. She walked to a storage locker near the back and retrieved something wrapped in a canvas tarp. When she unrolled it, the light hit silver and matte steel. His old badge, decommissioned pilot tag, and a stripped flight patch. R.H.Y.S. 27th Shadow Ops. Where'd you find these? He asked. Hidden behind a panel in the board tower. I think Julian tucked them away before they wiped your files. He stared at the items. Ghosts in metal. She held them out. They're yours. He hesitated, then took the patch and pinned it to the inside of his jacket. I'm not going back to who I was, he said, but I'm not hiding from it anymore either. Celine stepped closer. That's why people are listening. You didn't make noise. You made meaning. He looked at her. You didn't just survive this. You led through it. She gave a half smile. I had a good teacher, even if he was just mopping floors. They walked back out to the bench where Emery sat with Julian, watching clouds move like slow sails across the sky. Julian nudged Landon as he sat. You ever think it'd come to this? Not like this. And if they push again? We push back, he said simply. Not with bullets, with memory. Celine tilted her head. You always talk in riddles? Only when the truth's already obvious. They all laughed. Not the kind of laughter people have after winning. The kind people have when they know what it cost. Emery tapped her father's arm. Can we build a second bench? Maybe one by the school? He looked down at her, smile softening. Why? So people know this isn't just where it ended, it's where it started. He nodded. We'll build 2. The airstrip remained quiet that afternoon. No Ravencourt executives, no silent black transports, just a family on a bench, a girl with a fox plush under her arm, and the echo of something real reclaiming the ground beneath their feet. The new bench was finished by the end of the week. It sat just outside Emery's school, beneath a sycamore tree that had watched generations come and go. Landon had carved the same initials beneath the seat, ER, and beneath them, a second set, LR/when silence breaks, truth lands. He didn't make a speech. He didn't bring a camera. He just sat beside his daughter as she unwrapped 2 sandwiches and handed him the one without mustard. Celine joined them after dismissal, her blazer traded for a worn hoodie, her hair pulled back with the ease of someone choosing anonymity. They tried to pull the footage, she said quietly, but too many mirrors were already up. Doesn't matter, Landon replied. We weren't trying to go viral. She nodded. But you know what's strange? What? They're rebranding. Not Ravencourt, Echo Vision. New name, new logo, same bones. Julian stepped up behind them. And same contracts. I've seen the filings. They're shifting assets to avoid scrutiny. Landon didn't blink. Then we stay ahead of it. Julian tossed a folded folder onto the bench between them. I did my part, dug into board affiliations. Evelyn stepped down, but she's still pulling strings through shell companies. One of them's trying to buy an AI surveillance firm in the Balkans. Celine opened the folder. They're betting we'll move on, that public attention will fade. Landon leaned forward. Then we don't let it. Across the yard, Emery was teaching two younger kids how to draw flight paths with chalk. She paused, looked over her shoulder, and smiled. She's why this matters, he said. It was never about revenge. Celine nodded. It was about keeping the story visible, so people know it happened. A beat passed. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small envelope. There's something I didn't tell you. Landon eyed it. What is it? Ravencourt didn't just scrub your name. They used your blueprints, your exact framework, to build the next generation predictive drone systems. Julian's jaw tightened. Which means they used his work to silence people, Celine finished. Your engineering became their cage. Landon took the envelope and opened it. Inside, technical schematics, labeled Project Raven Sigma, author tag removed, but the handwriting on the margins was his. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, where's the server? Celine exchanged a glance with Julian. Remote, offshore, but mirrored here in a cold vault. One Evelyn never listed in inventory. I can get you in. He looked up. No cameras, no noise. We do this clean. Julian smirked. Like old times? No, Landon said, standing. This time we finish it. They moved at night. The vault sat beneath an abandoned Ravencourt subsidiary, an old data firm that once claimed to offer privacy-first analytics. The irony burned. Celine spoofed the access keys. Julian jammed the proximity beacons. Landon disarmed the thermal sensor grid using a trick he'd once taught a drone pilot who couldn't pass silent insertion drills. Inside, the vault hummed. Still alive. Landon stepped to the terminal. A biometric scanner blinked red. He didn't hesitate. Pulled a glove from his coat, peeled it back, revealing a faded scar on the edge of his palm. He pressed it to the scanner. Green light. Celine's eyes widened. They left your clearance live? No, he said. They just forgot where I put it. The server unlocked. Landon didn't delete the files. He rewrote the credits. Line by line, he restored every author tag, every engineer, every strategist they'd erased, including himself. Then he embedded a hidden directive. Any future iteration based on this code would trigger a redirect to a public archive, making future silencing attempts instantly transparent. He signed it with one line: engineers don't erase, they correct. As they left, Celine asked, "You're really done now?" He paused, locking the door behind them. "No," he said. "Now it's theirs to carry. But this part was for me." Back at the school bench, Emery waited beneath the sycamore with a flashlight and her fox plush. When Landon returned, she handed him a folded napkin with a crayon drawing inside. It was a jet, not crashing, not hiding, flying. The jet in the drawing had a name on the tail. E.R. Landon unfolded the napkin slowly, eyes scanning the looping crayon lines. There were stars overhead, a sun tucked in the corner, and below the jet, a single sentence written in Emery's careful hand. Truth can fly farther than silence. He ran his thumb across the paper. You wrote that? Emery nodded, flashlight resting in her lap. It's what you told me the night Mom died. I remembered. He sat beside her, the plastic bench creaking. I didn't think you were listening. I always was. The air was crisp. In the distance, sirens wailed. Not urgent, not near. Just the usual noise of a world still pretending it didn't almost collapse in its own silence. Julian stood by the truck, arms crossed, keeping watch without saying it aloud. Celine leaned against a lamppost, reviewing something on her tablet, another article confirming the board's unraveling. Ravencourt's stock had cratered by 14% that morning, not because of the footage, because the footage revealed how much had been hidden. That mattered more than blood. And it was Emery's drawing that brought Landon to his feet. Time for people to know where this started. Celine looked up. You sure? He nodded. They think we leaked a file. They don't understand we rebuilt a record. The press conference wasn't flashy. It wasn't even in a conference hall. Just the front steps of the airstrip's old admin building, with 3 broken microphones and a school folding table. Celine stood at the center, flanked by Landon and Julian. Emery sat in the front row with her backpack and fox plush, feet swinging, eyes wide. No sponsors, no security, just truth. Celine stepped up first. My name is Celine Ravencourt, daughter of Evelyn Ravencourt, former executive, and until this week, silent witness. The cameras clicked. The reporters leaned forward. I'm not here to defend what happened. I'm here to show you who made sure it couldn't happen again. She stepped back. Landon took her place. He didn't have a script, just the same jacket he wore when he was fired, the patch still hidden inside. The crowd hushed. My name's Landon Reese. Some of you called me a janitor, some called me a threat, some didn't call me anything at all. He looked straight at the front row of reporters. I spent 10 years cleaning messes no one wanted to admit existed. I swept hangars, mopped blood, hid my daughter's heart medication under a stack of bills I couldn't pay. More silence. Then one day, someone kissed me to save her life. And everything changed. Cameras flashed again. But this story isn't about a kiss. It's about how the people in power forgot the one thing they couldn't erase, what I used to know. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. My daughter drew this. He held it up. The jet, the initials, the words. This is why we did it. Not for revenge, for record, for kids who grow up thinking no one hears them unless they shout, for the workers who get called expendable right before they're asked to save everything. He laid the drawing on the table. If Ravencourt rebuilds itself under a new name, let this be their mirror. We'll be watching, and we'll remember. He stepped back. Emery clapped first, then others joined. By the end of the hour, the drawing was on 6 different news channels, not just as a symbol, but as a question. What other names have we erased before they could speak? Later that evening, Evelyn Ravencourt sat alone in a silent boardroom. The screens were off. Her assistant was gone. The shareholders had already started cutting ties, but she watched the footage. Landon's voice, Emery's drawing, and for a long, long time, she said nothing. Until she opened the file labeled Project R HYS 27 and typed 3 words beneath the author field. Restored with honor. She closed the file, and for the first time in years, she let herself feel the weight of what it meant. The last of the reporters left just before dusk, their vans crunching over gravel as they pulled away from the airstrip. The folding table sat empty now, save for Emery's drawing still pinned beneath a paperweight. A silver bolt Landon had saved from the Cessna's final repair job. He stood alone beside the bench, not as a janitor, not even as a pilot, but as a father who'd just rewritten the story of who gets remembered. Celine approached slowly, her shoes scuffing the concrete. "News just dropped. Echovision is halting operations pending federal investigation." He didn't react. She sat beside him. "They're calling you the man who refused to disappear." He chuckled softly. Not catchy. Not supposed to be, just honest. Behind them, Emery traced her name on the side of the bench with a fingertip, humming to herself. She wasn't hiding anymore either. She had seen every piece of what her father endured. And now, she was learning what it meant to endure with grace. Julian leaned against the truck, arms crossed, watching the sky fade from orange to blue. "You really done?" he asked eventually. Landon looked at the airstrip, at the bench, at the girl who still hadn't asked for anything but time with her dad. "I've said what I needed to say," he replied. "The rest is up to them." Julian nodded. "Then I'll stick around, help train the next batch." "Train them for what?" "For remembering," he said, "because forgetting got us here." Celine stood. "What'll you do now?" Landon looked to Emery. "Build something that lasts." She grinned. "With metal or memory?" He smiled. "Both." They walked toward the truck together, Emery skipping ahead. Just before climbing in, she turned around. "Can we leave the bench unlocked?" Landon raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "So other people can add names." He nodded. "We'll carve a line for them, right underneath ours." Weeks later, a new visitor arrived at the airfield. Young, nervous, with grease under his nails and a question in his eyes. "Is this the place?" he asked. Landon was kneeling beside the bench, sanding the next name into the wood. "That depends," he said. "I heard you don't erase people here." Landon stood. "We remember them. Then we teach them how to build their own record." The young man nodded. "Then this is where I start." Landon gestured to the seat. "Write your name, but write it small. We leave room for the others." And the bench, once just a father's quiet promise, became something more. A place where no one was forgotten. A place where silence never won. A place where even the erased could write themselves back in. Now, what should we name the next story? Subscribe and don't miss our next story. The rich man mocked the single dad's job until fire broke out and the janitor became the one everyone needed. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?